Members. I started working for myself in 1984, and I was in the position to take advantage of the government's enterprise allowance scheme, which paid me £40 a week for 12 months to set up my own business. And I started Equestrian Services, where I did anything with horses. I got a lot of work through someone who worked at the local feed merchants. She would recommend me and hand out my business cards. I guess she'd be referred to as a raving fan. She was my raving fan. I wanted to buy a horse to school on and sell it to make an extortionate profit, as I described it to a friend of mine. So I asked my friend, would he lend me the money to buy a horse? And he said no. However, he then suggested that I sell shares in the horse. And so that's what I did. My raving fan put me in touch with someone who was desperate to sell their horse. I had sold £10 shares to friends and family to buy a horse, and I raised £270. I now know this is called crowdfunding. Things. I took on one horse, was in a village outside Swindon, for 2 half-hour sessions per week. This wasn't very profitable, neither in time nor money. This job proved ultimately to be a lost leader, and I eventually got more work in that village, which made it worthwhile. As most of my income was cash, I would spend cash, so it would come in as cash, go out as cash. However, a friend of mine recommended that it was better to put it all through the bank. So when I wanted to buy a particular horse called Gable, I went to the bank, and they loaned me the whole amount, as they had evidence of my income. I started to realise that by relying on an hourly rate, my income was finite. My ability to earn was limited by the number of hours I could work. I began to realise that I was a technician. A technician is someone who is proficient in the relevant skills and techniques of their job. As the technician, I rushed about doing all the work and paying all the bills and doing all the paperwork. I was the business, 24/7. I was a sole trader. I was not running a business. There was nothing to sell. It had no equity. I was the business. Actually, I had my own job. Having more than one person at a time for a riding lesson multiplies up the income for 1 hour's work. Having horses at livery meant that they paid me for their horses to stand in a field. This was, and is, a passive income. I would sell the livery owners their hay, straw, shavings and feed, which increased my income by upsales and add-ons. So, if I had someone doing the accounts for me, I would have more time. If I had someone else doing the lessons for me, I would have more time. If I had someone mucking out and feeding the horses for me, I would have more time. What would I do with this extra time? A manager is a person responsible for controlling and organising the staff. Having employed people to do these jobs, what did I do? I abdicated. I abdicated my responsibility, and instead of actually becoming the manager, I stepped back and assumed that they knew what they were doing. I assumed that these people that I had employed would have my best interests at heart. No. I assumed that they would know how I wanted the business run. No. There were no job descriptions, no systems in place to ensure that the animals were cared for properly. I had totally abdicated. I had expected my employed technicians to be the managers as well, in my place. And in fact, I had not even employed good technicians. I was in charge of 2 livery yards at that point. One was the saddle club, where the clients were billed in arrears, and so my cash flow was always in arrears and was getting worse. I ended up hugely in debt, and so I gave up this yard and concentrated on my other yard and my horses, where I instigated billing in advance and payment for the lessons when booked. This was much better, as we had the money up front, and so the cash flow was much better. Thankfully, I had a contract with one of my subsequent business partners, so when we split up the business, I was able to claim my share of the business. To develop Gable End Farm, I bought the alpaca, who gave us functional need to dwell on the land, and we were granted temporary permission in 2008. Though I had a business plan, the reality was far from this document. I needed to prove profitability and sustainability to get the permanent planning permission. I started diversifying with other fibre-producing animals. I also produced other produce, which I took to markets: eggs, vegetables, meat. In 2015, I got permission to convert my barn into a house. My business vision changed from going to market to having a portfolio of property. I am now at the point of needing help to expand the business, to enable me to do more work on the business rather than just in the business. At Gable End Farm, I am no longer just the technician, I have become the manager.